The city of Vashtara glowed under 3 moons. It was the capital of the Threll Dominion, a vast empire that had ruled 100 star systems for over 600 years. Towers of black glass rose into the night sky, and the streets below were filled with quiet, orderly crowds. The Threll people believed in order above all else. They believed that strength was the only true law of the galaxy, and that weaker species existed to serve the strong. High Regent Solvane stood on the balcony of the Grand Spire, looking out over his city. He was tall, with gray skin and long fingers, and eyes that never seemed to blink. He had ruled the Dominion for 30 years, and in that time, he had never once doubted his own judgment. Tonight, however, something troubled him. A year ago, Threll warships had attacked a small human colony called New Meridian. The humans there had barely fought back. Within a day, the colony was in ruins, and Threll soldiers had taken hundreds of humans as prisoners. Solvane had ordered them brought back to Vashtara, not to be killed, but to be put on display. He wanted the galaxy to see what happened to species that resisted the Dominion. The prisoners were kept in a large facility near the Grand Spire, and every year, on the anniversary of the colony's fall, a few of them were paraded through the streets as a reminder of Threll power. But the war with Earth had not gone the way Solvane expected. He had thought that after New Meridian fell, the human government would surrender completely, begging for peace and offering their remaining colonies as tribute. Instead, humanity had done something strange. They had sent a message, quiet and polite, saying they wished to end the conflict. They had pulled back their fleets. They had stopped sending warships anywhere near Threll space. For a full year, there had been no fighting at all. Solvane's advisors called it a victory. They said humanity had been broken, that the species had finally learned its place. But Solvane was not so sure. Something about the silence felt wrong to him. Predators did not usually go quiet unless they were either dead or hunting. His thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Fleet Marshal Draxus, the commander of the Dominion's home fleet. Draxus was a broad, heavily built Threll, with a scar across one cheek, earned in battle many decades ago. He walked onto the balcony and bowed his head slightly, as custom required. "My regent," Draxus said, "a ship has entered the outer system. It is human." Solvane turned quickly. "A warship?" "No," Draxus said. "Sensors show it is old, slow, and poorly armed. It is broadcasting a distress signal on all frequencies. The signal says it is carrying refugees." Solvane frowned. "Refugees from where?" "The ship claims it comes from a human colony called Ashgrove Station. According to the message, the colony was struck by a rogue asteroid 3 months ago. Half the population died. The survivors have been drifting through space since then, looking for anywhere that will take them in. They say their fuel and food are nearly gone." "And they came here?" Solvane asked, his voice full of doubt. "To the capital of the empire that destroyed their sister colony?" Draxus nodded slowly. "That is what troubles me as well, my regent. But the ship carries no weapons capable of threatening us. Our scans show only civilian systems, life support, medical bays, cargo holds. Nothing more." Solvane thought for a long moment. He walked to the edge of the balcony and looked up at the sky, as if he could see the approaching ship with his own eyes, though it was still many hours away. "Let them come," he said finally. Draxus looked surprised. "My regent, are you certain? It could be a trick. A trick that uses one unarmed ship carrying starving refugees against a fleet of 1,000 warships?" Solvane allowed himself a small, cold smile. "What kind of trick could that be, Draxus? No, I think this is something else. I think humanity is showing us its true face, a face of weakness and desperation, and I intend to let the entire galaxy see it too." Solvane's mind was already working out the details. If humans were now so broken that they came crawling to the Dominion's own capital for mercy, then this was an opportunity too valuable to waste. He would allow the ship to dock. He would let his people see the pitiful state of the humans who had once dared to resist Threll rule. It would be the final proof that the war was over, and that the Dominion had won completely. Perhaps he would even allow reporters and broadcasters to record the arrival, so that every world in the Empire could watch the humans beg for shelter. "Send word to the orbital defense grid," Solvane said. "The ship is to be allowed through the outer perimeter. Have 2 of our cruisers escorted in, to make certain there are no surprises, but do not fire on it unless it gives us clear reason. "It will be done," Draxus said. He did not look entirely convinced, but he was a soldier who followed orders. He left the balcony, already speaking into his communicator, giving instructions to the fleet. Solvane remained outside for a while longer, thinking. He was not a cruel person by his own understanding. He truly believed that his actions kept peace across 100 worlds. Weakness invited chaos, in his mind, and strength prevented it. If humanity was now weak enough to come begging, then perhaps this could be the beginning of a new kind of peace between their two peoples, one where humans knew their place and served quietly within the Dominion's borders, as many other species already did. He did not know that, far away, on a small moon orbiting a gas giant many light-years from Vashtara, human engineers and soldiers had spent the past year working without rest. The ship now approaching the Threll capital was called the Solace. To Threll sensors, it looked exactly like what it claimed to be, an old civilian transport, slow and poorly armed, its outer hull dented and scorched from long months of hard travel. This part of the story was true. The Solace really had once been a refugee transport, and it really had once carried survivors away from a disaster. But the ship the Threll fleet was tracking now was not simply the old Solace. It was something built from the bones of that ship, and from an idea that had come from a small group of human strategists nearly a year earlier, right after the fall of New Meridian. That idea had started with a woman named Colonel Ethan Cole's superior, General Priya Anand, who led what remained of the human defense fleet after the disaster. She had stood before Earth's War Council and said something that many in the room found hard to hear. "We cannot win a war of ships against the Threll Dominion," she had said. "Not yet. Not for years. They have more warships than we have colonies. If we fight them fleet to fleet, we will lose everything." Many in the council had argued with her. Some wanted to strike back immediately, to avenge New Meridian with everything humanity had. General Anand had let them speak, and then she had said the thing that changed the direction of the entire war. "So we will not fight them the way they expect. We are going to make them believe we have surrendered. We are going to go quiet, and while we are quiet, we are going to build something they will never see coming, because they will not be looking for it. They believe strength only comes from fleets and firepower. We are going to remind them that it also comes from patience, and from people who refuse to stop fighting for the ones they love." The plan that followed was simple in its goal, though difficult in its execution. Human intelligence had learned, through careful and dangerous work, that the prisoners taken from New Meridian were not scattered across the Dominion, as the Threll government had claimed publicly. They were being held together, in a single large facility near the Grand Spire, in the very heart of Vashtara. This had been done for a cruel reason. The Threll wanted the prisoners close, so they could be paraded before the public as trophies, whenever it served the region's purposes. To most people, this would have seemed impossible to use as an advantage, but General Anand and her small circle of planners saw it differently. If the prisoners were all together, in one place, that place could be reached. And if the Threll believed that humanity had given up, believed that no rescue would ever come, then their guard around that facility might not be as strong as it should be. The plan required a ship that could get close enough to Vashtara to matter. A warship would never be allowed near the capital. It would be destroyed before it entered the outer system. But a refugee ship, broadcasting distress and pleading for mercy, might be allowed through, especially if the Threll regent wanted to use it as proof of his own victory. So human engineers took the old Solace, damaged already from a real disaster it had survived months earlier, and rebuilt it from the inside out. On the outside, it still looked slow, wounded, and harmless. Its outer hull sensors, the ones the Threll could scan from a distance, still showed a broken civilian ship exactly as before, but underneath that shell, nearly every system had been replaced. Hidden compartments had been built into the cargo holds, compartments lined with materials designed to block Threll scanning technology. Inside those compartments were things the Threll fleet could not detect. 200 soldiers from Earth's newest Special Operations Division, trained for exactly this kind of mission, along with equipment built specifically to break through Threll security systems quickly and quietly. The ship also carried something else, something that had taken the longest to build and the most care to hide. A set of small, fast landing craft, no larger than delivery vehicles, tucked into false compartments along the ship's spine. These were meant to launch the moment the Solace was in position, carrying the soldiers down toward the surface in the chaos of the first few minutes, before Threll defenses could organize a response. Leading the mission was Colonel Ethan Cole, a quiet man in his 40s, who had lost his younger sister at New Meridian. He had volunteered for the mission the day it was proposed, and he had spent the last year training the soldiers who would go with him, drilling the same plan over and over until every member of the team could carry it out with their eyes closed. Cole stood now in the command room deep inside the Solace, watching a display that showed their slow approach toward Vashtara. Around him, soldiers checked their equipment in silence. There was no music, no speeches, just quiet, careful preparation, the kind that comes from people who understand exactly what is at stake. 2 Threll cruisers moving to intercept, said the ship's pilot, a young woman named Lieutenant Mara Sato. They're not firing. Looks like an escort. Just like the Regent said he would do, Cole replied. He had read the intercepted Threll communications himself. Solvane's own words, translated by human intelligence teams. Let them come. He wants to put us on display, he thought. Let him. He walked to the small viewport at the side of the room and looked out at the darkness of space, and beyond it, the growing glow of a planet with 3 moons. How long until we reach orbit? Cole asked. 6 hours, Sato answered. Cole nodded. 6 hours, until the ship they thought was full of broken, starving refugees would open its doors directly above the capital of the empire that had taken his sister and hundreds of others from him. 6 hours, until the galaxy would learn that humanity's silence had never been surrender. It had been patience, sharpened into a plan. He turned back to his soldiers. Get some rest if you can, he said. When those doors open, there won't be time to think. Only time to act. The soldiers nodded, one by one, and returned to their quiet preparations. Far above them, on the bridge, Lieutenant Sato kept the ship on its slow, steady course, exactly the course a wounded, harmless refugee transport would take. Behind them, unseen and unknown to the Threll fleet escorting them in, the true nature of the Solace waited in silence, counting down the hours until it would reveal itself above the very heart of the empire that had underestimated it. Far away on Vashtara, High Regent Solvane gave the order for cameras to be set up near the capital's main landing platform, ready to broadcast the arrival across the entire Dominion. He believed he was about to show his people proof of a great victory. He did not yet understand that he was about to open his own front door to the very people he thought he had already defeated. The Solace continued its slow, steady approach, carrying its secret closer to Vashtara, with every passing hour. The 6 hours passed slowly for everyone aboard the Solace. Colonel Ethan Cole spent most of that time walking through the ship, checking on his soldiers, speaking quietly with each squad leader, making sure every plan was fresh in every mind. He did not sleep. Neither did most of the 200 soldiers hidden inside the ship's false compartments. They sat in the dark, wearing armor built to look bulky and slow on the outside, but light and fast underneath, waiting for the signal that would tell them the doors were about to open. In the command room, Lieutenant Mara Sato watched the 2 Threll cruisers that flew alongside the Solace like silent guards. She had studied Threll warship designs for months before the mission began, and she knew these 2 ships well. They were fast interceptors, built for speed rather than heavy firepower, exactly the kind of ship you would send to escort something you were not afraid of. They still think we're harmless, she said quietly to Cole, who had just returned to the bridge. Let them, Cole answered. That's the whole plan. As the Solace crossed into the inner system, Threll communication channels lit up with activity. Vashtara's traffic control sent landing instructions, directing the ship toward a large platform near the Grand Spire, the very heart of the capital. Human intelligence had expected this. It was, after all, exactly where the Regent wanted his cameras and his crowds, ready to witness the arrival of broken, defeated refugees. It was also, by pure convenience for the human plan, close to the facility where the New Meridian prisoners were being held. As the ship descended toward the planet, Cole gathered the squad leaders one final time in the command room. He kept his voice calm, though every person in the room could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them. In a few minutes, this ship is going to open its doors above the most heavily defended city in Threll space, he said. They're expecting refugees, sick, scared, unarmed people. That's what our sensors are telling them, and that's what they'll see in the first 3 seconds. We only get those 3 seconds once. After that, they'll know exactly what we are. So we move fast. We move exactly like we trained, and we get our people out. Nobody gets left behind. Not one. The squad leaders nodded. There was no need for more words. They had trained for this moment every day for the past year. Below, on the surface of Vashtara, a massive crowd had gathered near the landing platform, drawn by public announcements about the arrival of the human refugee ship. Many were simply curious. Others had come because the Regent's own broadcasters had spent the day speaking about the event, calling it proof that the war humanity had started was finally, completely over. Cameras stood ready on tall platforms, aimed at the sky, waiting to capture the moment the ship would land. High Regent Solvane himself stood on a raised platform near the front of the crowd, dressed in formal robes, surrounded by advisors and guards. Fleet Marshal Draxus stood close beside him, watching the sky with narrowed eyes. Despite his earlier doubts, even Draxus had begun to relax slightly, as the hours passed without incident. The ship's scans had shown nothing but civilian systems the entire way in. No weapons had been detected, no unusual power readings. Everything matched the story the humans had given. High above the city, the Solace slowed to a stop, hovering exactly where Threll traffic control had instructed. For a moment, nothing happened. The crowd below watched in silence, straining to see the battered old ship against the darkening evening sky. Then, slowly, several large sections along the ship's underside began to open. At first, this matched exactly what everyone expected. Cargo doors, opening the way a transport ship's doors should. A few Threll technicians near the platform even smiled, expecting to see frightened human families step out, blinking in the unfamiliar light of an alien sky. What came out instead was silence, and then motion, faster than anything the crowd had ever seen. The false compartments along the ship's spine, hidden from every scan, snapped open in a single coordinated instant. From them shot dozens of small, dark landing craft, moving with a speed that Threll sensors had never been designed to expect from a ship reading as harmless and unarmed. At the same moment, the main cargo doors, the ones everyone had been watching, opened fully, to reveal not refugees, but rows of armed human soldiers, already moving, already dropping toward the surface, on lines and small personal thrusters, built specifically for this kind of fast, silent descent. For 3 full seconds, the crowd below did not understand what it was seeing. Then the screaming began. High Regent Solvane stood frozen on his platform, staring upward as the sky above the grand spire filled with human soldiers descending like a sudden storm. His mind, so certain only moments before that he understood exactly what was happening, struggled to process the sight in front of him. "That is not possible," he said quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. Fleet Marshal Draxus recovered first. Years of military training took over, cutting through his shock. "All defense grids, active alert," he shouted into his communicator. "Ground forces, converge on the landing platform. Someone get the Regent to safety, now." Guards moved quickly to pull Solvane back from the platform's edge, but he resisted for a moment, still staring upward, still trying to understand. The crowd around him had broken into full panic, people running in every direction, screaming, pushing past each other in the growing chaos. Above them, the small landing craft that had launched from the Solace split apart, moving in different directions across the city with purpose and precision. Most of them, along with the majority of Cole's soldiers, headed not toward the Grand Spire itself, but toward a large, heavily guarded compound several kilometers away, the facility where the new Meridian prisoners had been held for the past year. Colonel Ethan Cole rode down with the first wave, his descent thruster carrying him and a dozen soldiers toward the compound's outer wall. Below him, he could see Threll guards scrambling to respond, some running toward defensive positions, others simply staring upward in confusion, caught completely off guard by an attack that should have been impossible according to every scan their systems had run. "Contact in 10 seconds, Cole said over the team's private channel. "Remember the layout. Breach teams to the east and west gates. Everyone else, secure the perimeter, and clear a path to the prisoner blocks. Move fast, move smart. We are not here to fight a war. We are here to bring our people home." The soldiers landed hard but controlled, hitting the ground in practiced formation, weapons already up. The first Threll guards who tried to stop them were quickly overwhelmed, not by brutal force, but by speed and precision. Human weapons, built and improved over the past year specifically to disable rather than destroy where possible, fired in short, controlled bursts. dropping guards without killing them whenever the choice was available. Cole had been clear about this from the very beginning of training. This mission was about rescue, not revenge, even if revenge would have felt easier in the moment. At the East Gate, Sergeant Dana Ruiz led a small breach team through the outer wall, using a compact charge built to cut through Threll security doors in seconds rather than minutes. The door blew inward with a controlled blast, and her team moved through the smoke immediately, clearing the corridor beyond with fast, careful movements. Inside, the facility looked exactly as human intelligence had described it. Long rows of holding cells, dim lighting, the air heavy with the smell of confinement. Threll guards inside scrambled to respond, some reaching for weapons, others simply too shocked to react at all. "Cover me," Ruiz said, moving quickly toward the first row of cells. Through the small window of the first cell door, she saw a face she recognized instantly from mission briefings. An older human man, thin and pale, but alive. His eyes went wide as he saw her armor, saw the small flag patch on her shoulder. You're human," he said, his voice hoarse from disuse. "Yes, sir," Ruiz said, already working to override the cell's locking mechanism. "We're here to take you home." Down the long row of cells, more of Cole's soldiers worked quickly, freeing prisoner after prisoner, moving them toward the compound's central courtyard, where the landing craft waited to carry them back up to the Solace. Some of the freed prisoners could barely walk after a year of captivity. Others, stronger despite everything they had endured, immediately tried to help their soldiers, carrying supplies, supporting the weaker among them, refusing to simply be carried to safety without contributing something themselves. Colonel Cole moved through the chaos calmly, directing teams, checking on the wounded, watching the growing number of freed prisoners gather in the courtyard. He kept one eye constantly on the sky, where Threll defense forces were beginning to organize a real response. Fighters were scrambling from nearby bases, ground troops were converging on the compound from multiple directions. The element of surprise, so carefully built over a year of planning, was beginning to fade. "Colonel," Sato's voice came through his earpiece from the Solace, still hovering above the city. "Threll fighters incoming, 3 minutes out. We need to move faster." "Copy that," Cole said. He looked around the courtyard, now filled with freed prisoners and soldiers working together to organize the evacuation. "How many do we have confirmed still inside?" "Command reports 40 more prisoners in the lower blocks," came the reply from one of his squad leaders. "Access is harder there. Heavier security." Cole made his decision instantly. "Ruiz, take your team, and get the ones we have up to the landing craft now. I'm taking a squad down to the lower blocks. We are not leaving anyone behind." As his team moved deeper into the compound, alarms blared across Vashtara, and the sky above the Grand Spire filled with Threll fighters scrambling to respond to an attack their commanders still could not fully explain. High Regent Solvane, safely inside a shielded command bunker beneath the spire, watched the chaos unfold on multiple screens, his earlier confidence completely shattered. "How?" he demanded of the officers around him. "How did a ship our own scans confirmed was unarmed do this?" None of them had an answer. The truth was something Solvane would not fully understand until much later, that humanity had learned, through hard and painful experience, that sometimes the greatest strength was not shown, but hidden, carried quietly forward, until the exact moment it was needed most. Below the Grand Spire, in the depths of the prisoner compound, Colonel Cole and his team pushed forward toward the lower blocks, determined to complete the mission they had trained an entire year to carry out, even as the full might of the Threll Dominion began to close in around them. The lower blocks of the prisoner compound lay beneath the main courtyard, reached through a narrow stairwell, guarded by 2 heavy doors. Colonel Ethan Cole moved down the stairs with 6 soldiers behind him, moving fast but careful, aware that every second now mattered more than it had an hour ago. Above them, the sound of alarms and distant explosions echoed through the compound's thick walls, a reminder that Threll forces were closing in from every direction. At the bottom of the stairs, the first heavy door blocked their path, its surface marked with warning symbols, in the sharp, angular Threll-written language. Corporal Jamal Reyes, the team's demolition specialist, moved forward and placed a small charge against the lock mechanism. "Clear," he said, stepping back. The charge went off with a controlled crack, and the door swung open to reveal a narrow corridor, lined with more cells, dimmer and colder than the ones above. Cole moved through first, weapon ready, and found himself face to face with two Threll guards who had been stationed at the bottom of the stairwell. They raised their weapons, but Cole's team was faster, and both guards were disabled before they could fire a shot. 40 prisoners reported down here, Cole said, checking the layout on the small display built into his wrist armor. Spread out, clear each cell. We don't have much time. The soldiers moved quickly through the corridor, working cell by cell. Behind each door, they found more survivors from New Meridian, thin and weary but alive, many of them crying with relief and disbelief at the sight of human soldiers standing in front of them. One of the freed prisoners was a young woman named Maya Okafor, who had been only 19 years old when the colony fell. She had spent the past year working in the facility's small medical bay, tending to other prisoners with whatever limited supplies the Threll guards allowed. When Cole's team reached her cell, she did not cry like some of the others. Instead, she immediately began asking questions, her mind already working. "There are 3 prisoners in the medical bay who can't walk on their own," she said. "One of them was badly injured just last week. If we don't bring proper support, they won't make it up those stairs." Cole nodded, impressed by her clear thinking, even after everything she had endured. "Show us," he said. Maya led 2 of the soldiers to the small medical bay at the end of the corridor, where 3 prisoners lay on thin cots, too weak to move on their own. The soldiers worked quickly, using portable stretchers built into their equipment packs, designed specifically for situations like this one, and began carrying the injured prisoners back toward the stairwell. As the last of the lower block prisoners were freed, Cole's earpiece crackled with an urgent message from Sato, still coordinating from the solace above the city. "Colonel, Threll ground forces have reached the compound's outer perimeter. Ruiz's team has most of the prisoners loaded and heading up now, but you need to move. Fighters are 3 minutes out, and there's a larger force forming up about a kilometer from your position." "Copy," Cole said. "We're moving now. Everyone, back to the courtyard, double time." The team moved quickly back through the corridor, carrying the wounded prisoners between them, with Maya Okafor helping to guide the group and keep the freed prisoners calm, despite the chaos surrounding them. As they climbed the stairs back toward the courtyard, the sound of fighting grew louder, gunfire and small explosions echoing from somewhere near the compound's main gates. At the top of the stairs, Cole found Sergeant Ruiz directing a chaotic but organized evacuation. Landing craft descended in waves into the courtyard, loading freed prisoners as quickly as possible, before lifting off again toward the solace. Soldiers held defensive positions around the courtyard's edges, exchanging fire with Threll ground troops who had begun pushing through the compound's outer defenses. "Colonel, good to see you," Ruiz said, ducking as a shot passed close overhead. "We've got most of the prisoners loaded. This is the last group coming up from the lower blocks?" "Confirmed," Cole said, helping to guide the wounded prisoners toward the nearest waiting landing craft. "Everyone accounted for?" "Command's running the count now," Ruiz said. "We should know in a minute." As the last of the lower block prisoners were loaded onto the landing craft, a wave of Threll fighters roared overhead, moving to engage the Solace directly. High above the city, the old refugee ship, whose true nature had been fully revealed by now, opened hidden weapon systems along its hull, systems that had been built and disguised over the past year, specifically to survive exactly this kind of engagement. Point defense turrets, small but precise, began firing on the incoming fighters, while the ship's shields, far stronger than anything a simple refugee transport should carry, absorbed the fighters' return fire. Lieutenant Sato guided the Solace through the growing battle with practiced skill, keeping the ship positioned to protect the landing craft, still moving between the surface and the ship's open cargo bays. It was a delicate balance, one she had trained for extensively, but never actually performed under real fire until this moment. "Colonel, we've got a problem," she said over the comm channel, her voice tight with concentration as she worked the ship's controls. "Command's final count says we're still missing 4 prisoners. Records show they were moved to a separate holding area 3 days ago, not in the main compound." Cole felt his stomach tighten. "Where?" "Small building, about 200 meters west of your position. Records call it an interrogation facility." Cole exchanged a quick look with Ruiz, who immediately understood what he was thinking, without needing to be told. "I'll finish loading here," Ruiz said. "Go get them." Cole gathered a small team, 4 soldiers including Corporal Reyes, and moved quickly toward the western edge of the compound, staying low, as Threll ground forces continued pushing in from multiple directions. The interrogation facility was a smaller, more heavily fortified building than the main compound, its entrance guarded by a reinforced door that would take longer to breach than anything they had encountered so far. "We don't have time for a slow breach," Cole said, studying the door for a moment. "Reyes, big enough charge to drop it fast, but watch for anyone directly behind it." Reyes worked quickly, placing a larger charge against the door's hinges. The team backed away, and a moment later, the charge detonated, blowing the heavy door completely off its frame. Cole's team moved through the smoke immediately, weapons ready, and found themselves in a short hallway leading to a row of small, isolated cells, far more secure than anything in the main compound. Inside the first cell, they found a man who introduced himself, in a shaking voice, as Marcus Webb, one of New Meridian's colony administrators before the attack. The Threll had kept him separate from the others, believing he held valuable information about human colony defenses, and had questioned him repeatedly over the past year. "There are 3 more, Webb said, as soldiers helped him from his cell. "Down the hall. They took my daughter, too. She's just a kid. She doesn't know anything. They just wanted to use her to make me talk." Cole felt something harden in his chest at those words, but he kept his voice steady and calm, focused entirely on the task in front of him. "We'll get her," he said. "Reyes, with me. Everyone else, secure Mr. Webb and prepare to move." Cole and Reyes moved quickly down the hallway, breaching 2 more cells to find the remaining prisoners, exhausted and frightened but alive. In the final cell, they found a girl no older than 12, curled into the corner of a small, bare room. She flinched hard when the door blew open, clearly expecting more of the same treatment she had endured for months. "It's okay," Cole said gently, kneeling down to her level, keeping his weapon lowered, and his voice as soft as the chaos around them allowed. "My name is Ethan. I'm here to take you to your father. He's safe. We're going to get you both home." The girl, whose name they would later learn was Lily Webb, stared at him for a long moment, as if not quite believing what she was hearing. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his offered hand, allowing him to help her to her feet. Outside, the sound of fighting had grown louder and closer. As Cole's team moved back through the ruined doorway, carrying and guiding the final freed prisoners toward the extraction point, a squad of Threll soldiers rounded the corner of a nearby building, weapons raised. "Contact!" Reyes shouted, already moving to shield the freed prisoners with his own body, as the team returned fire in short, controlled bursts. The exchange was brief, but intense, and though none of Cole's soldiers were seriously hurt, the delay cost them precious time they could not easily spare. "Colonel, you need to move now," Sato's voice came through, sharper with urgency than before. "A second wave of fighters is inbound, and ground forces are massing near your extraction point. I can hold position for 2 more minutes, maybe 3, but that's it, before I have to pull back to protect the ship and everyone already aboard." "Understood," Cole said, pushing his team forward at a faster pace, half carrying some of the weaker prisoners between them. "Ruiz, we're 2 minutes out. Hold that landing craft for us." "Copy that, Colonel," Ruiz answered. "We'll be here." As Cole's team raced across the final stretch toward the extraction point, the sky above them filled with the flashes of ongoing battle between the Solace and the Threll fighters, attempting to bring it down. High Regent Solvane, watching from his shielded bunker, gave increasingly desperate orders to his commanders, demanding that the human ship be destroyed before it could escape with its stolen prisoners, and, more importantly to him now, before it could escape with the truth of what had just happened to his once unquestioned authority. But even as Threll forces pressed harder, closing in from every direction, Cole and his team pushed forward, carrying the last of the freed prisoners toward the waiting landing craft, determined to finish what they had come to do, no matter what stood in their way. Colonel Ethan Cole's team reached the extraction point just as Sergeant Ruiz was preparing to give the order to lift off without them. The last landing craft sat waiting in the compound's courtyard, its engines already humming, ready to carry the final group of freed prisoners up to the Solace. "Go, go, go!" Cole shouted, pushing the last of the prisoners toward the open hatch. Reyes helped lift young Lily Webb aboard, while her father, still weak but determined, climbed in right behind her, refusing help despite his exhaustion. Cole did a quick count, confirming every member of his team and every rescued prisoner was accounted for, before climbing in himself. Go. He called to the pilot. Everyone's aboard. The landing craft lifted off immediately, rising fast through the smoke and chaos of the battle still raging across the compound below. Through the small viewport, Cole watched Vashtara shrink beneath them, the city lit by the flashes of ongoing combat between Threll fighters and the Solace's defenses. As the landing craft approached the larger ship, Cole could see the toll the battle had taken. Sections of the Solace's outer hull were scorched and damaged from the fighters' weapons, though its stronger, hidden shields had held against the worst of the attacks. Small fires burned along parts of the hull, quickly being extinguished by automated systems built into the ship's design. The landing craft slipped into the main cargo bay, just as its doors began to close behind them, sealing out the chaos of the battle outside. Cole helped guide the freed prisoners out of the craft and into the waiting arms of medical teams who had been standing ready throughout the entire mission, prepared to treat whatever injuries and illnesses the rescued prisoners carried after their long captivity. Report, Cole said, moving quickly toward the bridge as soon as the last prisoner was safely handed off to medical care. All prisoners accounted for, Sato said as he arrived, her hands still moving quickly across the ship's controls, guiding the Solace through evasive maneuvers even as she spoke. 212 rescued, including the 4 from the separate holding facility. Our casualties are light. A few injuries, nothing critical. We were lucky. Lucky and well-trained, Cole said, though he knew both things had mattered equally. What's our situation? Not good, Sato admitted. We're still taking fire from a second wave of fighters, and Threll Command has scrambled heavier warships from orbital defense platforms. If those reach us before we can get clear, our shields won't hold against that kind of firepower for long. Cole studied the tactical display, watching the icons representing Threll forces converging on their position from multiple directions. The mission had always known this moment might come. Rescuing the prisoners had been only the first half of the plan. Getting everyone home safely was the second, and in many ways harder, half. What about the jump point? Cole asked. Still 40 seconds out, Sato said. We need those 40 seconds, Colonel, and right now, I don't know if we have them. As if to answer her doubts, 3 heavy Threll cruisers dropped out of high orbit, moving to intercept the Solace's path toward the system's edge, where a prepared jump point would allow the ship to escape into faster-than-light travel. Their weapons, far more powerful than the fighters that had harassed the ship so far, began charging for a devastating first strike. It was at this moment that Sato's console lit up with a new set of readings, ones that made her eyes widen with surprise. Colonel, we're getting multiple new contacts. They just dropped out of hyperspace at the system's edge, right where our jump point was supposed to be. Cole felt his stomach drop. Reinforcements, he thought. They've called in more ships to cut off our escape. But as the new contacts resolved on the display, Sato's expression shifted from alarm to something closer to relief and disbelief. Colonel, these aren't Threll ships. IFF signals are confirming human transponder codes. It's the Second Fleet, sir. General Anand's reserve force. Cole stared at the display for a moment, understanding beginning to dawn. The plan had always included a contingency, one known only to the highest levels of command, in case the extraction became more difficult than expected. A reserve human fleet, hidden and waiting at the edge of Threll space, for exactly this signal, ready to punch a corridor through enemy defenses if the Solace needed help escaping. They must have been tracking our progress the whole time, Cole said, waiting for the signal. On the bridge of the human flagship Resolute, leading the reserve fleet now surging into the system, General Priya Anand watched the unfolding battle with grim determination. She had authorized this contingency a year ago, knowing there was a real chance the extraction might need more than just the Solace's hidden strength to succeed. Now, watching Threll cruisers move to cut off her people's escape, she gave the order without hesitation. All ships, engage the Threll cruisers blocking the Solace's path, she said. Clear a corridor. Get our people out. The Second Fleet, 20 ships strong, had been built and prepared over the same year that the Solace's disguise had been perfected, and it carried weapons and technology that the Threll Dominion had never seen from humanity before. As the fleet surged forward, engaging the Threll cruisers with precise, coordinated fire, the balance of the battle shifted rapidly. The Threll cruisers, caught between the fleeing Solace and an unexpected human battle fleet, found themselves suddenly on the defensive. Their commanders, trained for centuries in a doctrine that assumed Threll technology and firepower would always be superior, struggled to adjust to human weapons that hit harder and faster than their sensors had predicted. Aboard the Solace, Cole watched the battle unfold on the tactical display, feeling a mixture of relief and lingering tension. "Sato, get us to that jump point. Let the fleet clear our path." "On it," Sato said, guiding the ship forward as the reserve fleet's ships engaged the remaining Threll cruisers, drawing their fire and buying the precious time the Solace needed. Below, on the surface of Vashtara, High Regent Solvane watched the battle unfold from his command bunker with growing horror. The screens before him showed not just the successful human rescue operation, but now a full human battle fleet engaging his own forces in what should have been the safest, most heavily defended system in the entire Dominion. "This is not possible," he said again, the words feeling hollow even as he spoke them. Around him, his advisors and commanders scrambled to respond, but the truth was becoming clear to everyone in the room. Humanity had not surrendered a year ago. They had waited, planned, and built something the Dominion had never anticipated, all while allowing Solvane to believe he had already won. Fleet Marshal Draxus, standing nearby, watched the battle with a different kind of expression, one that mixed frustration with something almost like grudging respect. He had spent his entire career believing that strength was shown openly, through fleets and firepower on constant display. Watching the human plan unfold before him, he began to understand a harder truth, that real strength could also be patient, hidden, and used with precision, exactly when it mattered most. "Order all remaining defense forces to fall back and regroup," Draxus said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision. "We cannot win this engagement. Continuing to fight will only cost us more ships for no gain." Solvane turned to him sharply. "You would have me let them escape, after what they have done here today?" "My regent," Draxus said carefully, "what they have done here today is take back what was theirs, nothing more. If we continue this fight, we risk losing ships, and losing them for nothing, because our enemy has already achieved what they came to do. We can find another way to answer this, but not today, and not by throwing away more of our fleet against an enemy who has clearly planned for this moment far longer than we understood." Solvane said nothing for a long moment, staring at the screens showing his cruisers taking damage, his fighters being driven back, and at the center of it all, the human ship that his own people had once believed was carrying nothing more than desperate, harmless refugees. "Fall back," he said finally, the words bitter in his mouth. "Let them go." Aboard the Solace, Cole watched as Threll resistance began to weaken, the remaining cruisers pulling back under Draxus's orders. The path to the jump point opened before them, cleared by the combined efforts of the Second Fleet's engagement. "Jump point reached," Sato announced. "Ready to make the jump on your order, Colonel." Cole looked back through the ship toward the medical bay, where the 212 rescued prisoners from New Meridian were being cared for, many of them finally allowing themselves to believe that their long captivity was truly over. He thought of Maya Okafor, who had helped guide the wounded to safety, even in her own exhaustion. He thought of Lily Webb, reunited with her father after months of separate captivity. He thought of his sister, lost a year ago at New Meridian, whose memory had driven him through every difficult moment of this mission's long preparation. "Make the jump," Cole said quietly. The Solace, along with the ships of the Second Fleet providing cover, engaged their jump drives and vanished from Threll space in a brief flash of light, leaving behind a shaken capital, a humbled regent, and a battle that would be remembered across the galaxy for a very long time. Behind them, on the surface of Vashtara, the crowds that had gathered to witness what they believed would be proof of humanity's defeat instead carried home a very different memory, the sight of a harmless refugee ship opening its doors to reveal not weakness, but a strength that had been hidden, patient, and waiting for exactly the right moment to strike. News of what happened above Vashtara spread across the galaxy faster than anyone in the Threll Dominion could control. Other species, many of whom had lived under Threll rule or influence for generations, watched recordings of the event with a mixture of shock and quiet fascination. A ship that Threll sensors had confirmed, again and again, to be nothing more than a wounded, harmless refugee transport, had opened its doors above the Empire's own capital, and carried out a rescue mission so precise and so bold that it had humbled a fleet 1,000 ships strong. For the first time in centuries, smaller species across Threll space began to whisper a question that had rarely been asked before. If the mighty Dominion could be fooled so completely, and its capital struck so deeply, was Threll's strength truly as absolute as it had always claimed to be? 3 days after the escape, the Solace and the ships of the Second Fleet arrived safely at Earth's primary defense station, a large orbital platform that had been built specifically to receive them. Word of the mission's success had traveled ahead of the fleet, carried by a fast courier ship, and by the time the Solace docked, a crowd of officials, families, and reporters had gathered to witness the return. Colonel Ethan Cole stood near the ship's main hatch as it opened, watching the first of the rescued prisoners step out onto the platform. Many of them were met immediately by family members who had waited a full year without knowing whether their loved ones were alive or dead. The sound of reunions, crying and laughing at the same time, filled the platform's wide-open bay. Marcus Webb walked out slowly, holding his daughter Lily's hand tightly, both of them still adjusting to the idea that their captivity was truly over. Maya Okafor stepped out with quiet dignity, already offering to help medical teams manage the arrival of the other survivors, unwilling to stop helping others even now that she herself was finally safe. General Priya Anand, who had flown back ahead of the main fleet to oversee the reception, found Cole standing near the edge of the crowd, watching the reunions with a tired but satisfied expression. "You did it," she said, coming to stand beside him. "All of it, exactly as planned." "We were lucky," Cole said, "if your reserve fleet hadn't been there." "The plan accounted for that possibility," Anand said, "but plans only work as well as the people carrying them out. You and your team made this happen, Colonel. Don't take that away from yourselves." Cole watched as Lily Webb laughed at something her father said, the first real laugh he had heard from her since pulling her out of that cell 3 days earlier. "It was worth it," he said quietly. "Whatever it cost, it was worth this." In the weeks that followed, the full story of the mission became known publicly, both on Earth and across the wider galaxy. Human officials, working carefully with allied species and neutral observers, made certain that the true nature of the rescue was understood clearly. This had not been an act of aggression or revenge, but a careful, focused effort to bring home people who had been unlawfully taken and held. Human forces had used minimal force wherever possible, had targeted only the facility holding the prisoners, and had withdrawn immediately once the rescue was complete, without attempting to strike at the wider city or its civilian population. This distinction mattered greatly to many of the species watching from across Threll space. It showed that humanity's hidden strength was not simply a weapon to be used without restraint, but a tool wielded with clear purpose and control. Many species who had long lived under the shadow of Threll power began to see humanity differently after this, not simply as another conquered or defeated people, but as something new, a species capable of great patience and great strength, used together rather than in place of each other. Back on Vashtara, High Regent Solvane faced a difficult period following the incident. His authority, once considered unquestionable, had been visibly shaken in front of his own people and the wider galaxy. Advisors who had once agreed with everything he said now began to voice doubts about the wisdom of continued conflict with a species capable of such careful, hidden planning. Fleet Marshal Draxus, in the months that followed, found himself increasingly consulted on matters beyond simple military strategy. His warning before the rescue, and his clear-eyed assessment during the battle itself, had earned him a new kind of respect among Threll leadership, one built not on the traditional show of open strength, but on the harder wisdom of understanding an opponent honestly. It was Draxus who eventually proposed something that surprised many within the Dominion's government, a formal, careful approach toward peace talks with Earth, built not on demands for surrender, but on mutual acknowledgement of what had happened, and a genuine effort to avoid further conflict. "We believed strength was only ever shown loudly, through fleets and firepower on display," Draxus said during a private council meeting, months after the incident. "The humans have taught us, at great cost to our pride, that strength can also be quiet, patient, and precise. If we continue to underestimate them, believing our old assumptions still hold true, we will only invite further losses. It is time we learn to see them clearly and treat with them accordingly. Solvane, humbled by the events of that day in ways he had never expected to be, eventually agreed to open a channel of communication with Earth's government, the first genuine step toward negotiation since the conflict had begun. It would take years of careful diplomacy before anything resembling lasting peace was achieved, and the road ahead was far from simple or guaranteed. But the first door toward that peace had been opened, in its own strange way, by the very same doors that had once opened above Vashtara, carrying not refugees, but rescue. Back on Earth, Colonel Ethan Cole returned to a quieter life in the months following the mission, though he remained closely involved with the ongoing care and support of the rescued survivors. He visited Maya Okafor from time to time, who had gone on to train as a full medical officer, determined to help others the way she had helped her fellow prisoners during their darkest days. He kept in touch with the Webb family as well, watching Lily slowly return to something resembling a normal childhood, her fear of confined, dark spaces fading a little more with each passing month. One evening, nearly a year after the rescue, Cole stood on a quiet hillside overlooking the memorial, built for those lost at New Meridian, including his own sister. The list of names carved into the stone was long, a permanent reminder of what the war had cost. But beside that memorial, a second, smaller monument had been added recently, a simple plaque honoring the rescue mission and all those who had planned and carried it out, along with the 212 names of those who had finally come home. General Anand joined him there that evening, standing quietly beside him for a while before speaking. "They still don't fully understand us," she said, looking out at the darkening sky. "The Threll, I mean. They think our patience was a strategy, a clever trick we used once, and could use again whenever we choose." "Wasn't it?" Cole asked. Anand shook her head slowly. "It wasn't a trick, Colonel. It was who we are. We wait, we plan, we build quietly. And when the moment comes, when the people we love need us most, we act with everything we have. That's not a strategy. That's simply the truth of us, and I suspect it always will be." Cole thought about that for a long moment, looking out at the names carved into the stone before him, thinking of his sister, of Maya, of Lily and her father, and of all the quiet, patient work that had gone into bringing so many of them home. "Let's hope the rest of the galaxy learns to understand that too," he said finally. "Before they make the mistake of underestimating us again." Far above them, in the night sky, stars shone steadily, carrying within their light the quiet promise of a galaxy that had learned, in one unforgettable moment above an alien capital, that humanity's true strength was never simply about ships or weapons. It was about the patient, unbreakable will to bring their people home, no matter how long it took, or how far they had to go to do it. And so, the story of the ship that everyone believed was carrying refugees, until its doors opened above the alien capital, became more than just a single mission remembered in military records. It became a lesson carried quietly across 100 worlds, that the quietest ships sometimes carry the loudest kind of strength, and that those who underestimate patience often learn, far too late, exactly what it was they failed to see coming.